In this video, we're going to be taking a look at two different graphs to find the value, unit, and meaning of the slopes. Now, the way we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and find the change in y over the change in x, and we're going to have to take a y2 minus a y1 and divide that by an x2 minus an x1. And we'll see what that looks like in a second as soon as we label our points in the graph. So typically, if we have a linear curve on a graph, we can go ahead and choose any 2 points. I usually like to choose the first and last point, if that makes sense. So if I take a look at this point, the x coordinate is 2, and it goes up 5. And then for our final point, the x coordinate is 10, and you go up 25. So we have our initial x value and then our final x value, and then we did the same thing for the y values. We have an initial y value and then a final y value. So what we want to do is take our y2, which is 25, and I'm going to go ahead and put a unit with that. Everything along the y direction is a time in seconds, so it's going to be 25 seconds minus 5 seconds, and then we're going to divide that by the difference of our x values. So if we go ahead and take our x2, that's going to be 10, and all of our x values are distances in meters. So we'll say 10 meters minus, and then our initial one is 2 meters. And then from there, it's some pretty basic math. 25 minus 5 is going to give us 20 seconds. And then 10 minus 2 is going to give us 8 meters. So our final answer, we can take that and then we could reduce it down to 5 over 2 seconds per meter, or 2.5 seconds per meter. Okay, so the way that we find the units are we initially place them where they belong. So then when we come up with our final solution, the units will kind of like naturally fall into place. Again, how we did that is when we take our y values, we take a look at what we have on the y-axis and then grab the unit from there. Everything is a time in seconds, and we did the same thing along the x-axis. We have distances in meters. So when you analyze what that means, that is how many seconds it takes to travel per meter. So 2.5 seconds per meter that you're traveling. Now for our second one, we're going to use a similar process. You want to make sure you label everything. So our first spot is 2, and then 20, and then our final one is 10, and that looks like it's about 8. Now we want to make sure we go ahead and we're careful labeling those. This is our x1, and then this is our x2, and then for our y values, the same thing. This is our first y value, and this is our second one. So we're going to use the same process we did before. We're going to say 8 shots because we have shots missed over here. The unit is in shots. So y2 is 8 minus our y1, which is 20. And then on the bottom, we have our x2, which is 10, and this is weekly practice time in hours, so 10 hours minus our x1, which is 2 hours. Again, what we do is we go ahead and subtract those and keep the units along with it. So 8 minus 20 is negative 12. And then 10 minus 8, or excuse me, 10 minus 2 is 8. And then we can go ahead and reduce our final answer to negative 3 over 2, or 1.5, negative 1.5 shots per hour. So what this one means is because it's negative, we are basically reducing the amount of shots missed per hour of practice. So you are going to reduce the shots that you miss by 1.5, per hour of practice that you add to your practice time. So the method is to make sure you label your first and second point. If the curve is linear, technically you can pick any 2 points. You could have picked this one over here and this one over here. You should still get the same exact numbers. I typically like to use the first and last number. If your number doesn't land nicely in a spot where you can read the X and Y value very well, then you might want to go find a different point. But from there, you want to label what the points are, like these coordinates here, 2, 5, and then 10, 25, and then take a moment to label your x1, x2, and then your y1 and y2. So then as you place them into this formula, you won't get the order mixed up, and place the units with those numbers as you're plugging them in. If you're grabbing y values, grab the y units along with it. If you're grabbing x units, grab the x values, grab the x units with it. And then every time you're going to get a unit, which is something over something, because it's always change in y over change in x. Okay, so it's always the number along with your top unit per one of whatever's on the bottom. So 2.5 seconds per 1 meter, or negative 1.5 shots per 1 hour. And then that will help you with the meaning of the slope. So I hope that was helpful in helping you calculate the slopes with the units and then also attaching a meaning with those. Thank you for watching and listening.